M25 protests justified. The eco group Insulate Britain have blocked parts of the motorway 6 times in the past 2 weeks, with more than 50 activists taking over a junction near Heathrow yesterday morning. This was supposed to have stopped. The group, who want better insulation in homes, have apologised for any inconvenience caused, but refuse to stop until their demands are met. Ministers have twice applied for an injunction, with activists currently facing jail time and an unlimited fine for disrupting traffic on the M25. Are the protests justified, Kate?
Well, it would be lovely if we didn't have to have protests like this, but it is simply not the case that Insulate Britain have tried writing a sternly worded letter. They've done all the other things. It's not like the government would listen to them if they did anything in any other way. What they're asking for is incredibly simple. They're asking for Boris Johnson to fulfil one of his own manifesto pledges. And, you know, less than 2 years ago, Boris Johnson was saying there'll be £9 billion made available to do exactly this. They're also asking for something which has to be done sooner or later, and which would alleviate the fuel crisis, create jobs, improve the quality of life for people in Britain, and reduce fuel bills. What they're asking for is a win for absolutely everybody who isn't a billionaire oil magnate. And I think, you know, it's amazing that the focus has been so much on some people's journeys being disrupted, because if anybody's journey has been disrupted this week, let's be honest, it's by the fuel crisis. Thousands and thousands of people across Britain have been stuck in queues because they can't get somewhere. And then the 4 people who get delayed because there's a protest going on about an incredibly important issue. And yes, of course, it's distressing when people's journey is delayed and when they can't get, so especially if it's an important journey. But if we don't do something about climate change, everybody's lives are going to be utterly decimated and millions lost.
And Dawn, they have drawn attention to it.
They have, but it's not winning support for their cause, is it? And, you know, there are people that have not just been inconvenienced, they have been seriously, their health has been risked. There was that poor lady who was having a stroke who got held up in this, and she was held up for 2 hours, which means she's now paralysed. If she'd have got there to the hospital, she wouldn't have ended up in this situation. There was a car crash where we don't even know how that woman's doing. She was critically, very badly injured. There have been doctors held up in this. There was one particular cancer doctor I heard being interviewed, and he was saying he's missed an entire day of appointments. These people are already behind in their cancer treatment, Jeremy. And you know what annoys me with this lot is that they are putting lives at risk by running out onto the M25 for something they don't even believe enough in themselves. At least 3 of them, and I'm sure more if I investigated further, don't have their own homes even insulated. So it's the hypocrisy, and they are willing to risk...
Is that hypocritical?
Not even willing to risk just their own lives. But, you know, I've reported on road traffic accidents, Kate, and if you saw the aftermath of what happens when someone runs out into the road like this and then having to go and knock on someone's door and tell them they've lost loved ones in a car crash, people are going to have to live with that for the rest of their lives, knowing that they might have accidentally killed one of these protesters. This is wrong what they're doing. They're going about it the wrong way. And let's face it.
There's an easy way to end these protests. What is wrong is that the government hasn't fulfilled a key manifesto pledge. What is wrong is that the climate crisis is not being taken seriously. What is wrong
Kate,
is that when people
more in this
protest,
country than most countries around the world.
When people protest in other ways, they don't get the media attention. The stories don't get covered. The way that we solve this problem is that we make sure that we cover these stories before people have to go to these more extreme measures.
If the government...
What would make the difference would be if we took this situation seriously.
We are taking it serious. Kate, we are taking it serious. We in this country are responsible for 1% of global emissions. China, 26%. And they are shoving up coal-powered power stations as we speak. Now, why don't these people go and protest outside the Chinese embassy, or even better, in Tiananmen Square? Let's see how they get on then. And if the government gave into this sort of protest, that is given into
Let's see what the calls are saying on this.
Lots of calls coming in on this one. So we'll speak to Anne from West Yorkshire first, who thinks the protesters are justified.
Justified, Anne.
Yes, absolutely. I watched GMB last week and wanted to listen to an M25 protester, Insulate Britain. He was asked questions he was not allowed to answer. He ended up walking off the show, and Dawn Leeson was on that show.
Oh, yes, she was.
Yes.
He was with Richard Madeley, but didn't he walk off because he was asked why he hadn't insulated his own home?
No. He walked off
there,
because
he did.
He walked off because of Richard Madeley's behaviour. He was not allowed to answer any questions. He was so frustrated that he wanted to talk to the people, but Richard wouldn't let him. But what's happening is People are complacent, living in their own little bubble, and the protesters are standing up to be counted. The government isn't listening. Most of the public are not listening. We only have to see the rapid erosion of the East Coast, floods, weather change like we've never, ever seen before, and humans are causing it. People are living in a spoilt world. It's all
Dawn,
going to end.
how would you respond to
I
this?
would respond, Anne. So you think it's perfectly acceptable for that poor lady to end up paralysed because of this behaviour, for lives to be risked in traffic accidents for this behaviour by people who don't even believe what they're preaching because they don't even insulate their own homes. You're fine with that. You're fine. No, let Anne answer, Kate. You're fine with that.
Let me speak now. Let me speak now. Right? Okay. Listen to me. I'm sick and tired of hearing about that story about the lady that was paralysed. That son should not have taken her on his own on that motorway. It was a 999 emergency. So don't you come that with me. I'm 70 and he should not be taking a stroke victim to any hospital. It was an emergency. And not only that, we have the 70s pile up on the motorways where nothing was said. All motorways were blocked in the 70s. So I'm sick and tired of hearing you talking about emergency services.
I'm sure that poor family are sick and tired of now having to care for someone who's paralysed because of the behaviour of these idiots who are not helping their cause.
You're an idiot, Dawn. You're an idiot.
Let's not be personal here. And thank you very much. Storm.
OK, we're going to speak to Richard from Buckinghamshire now, who completely disagrees with Anne.
You would disagree, Richard?
Yeah, basically it's the working class that are suffering getting to work. Essential food supplies into schools that are delivered by delivery trucks, courier drivers. They're meant to be getting into school. You made a list a minute ago. All of those people on that list, apart from the honeymooners, they're all affected. The pollution, these people who fought through this clearly didn't think it through properly. And to be fair, the local councils around the country have been insulating homes for the last decade.
The thing is, Richard, not at the speed at which they promised. Yes, lots of local councils have tried to do this. They could be doing loads and loads more if the government simply stuck to the manifesto pledges that they made. And
they already are.
But
they already are doing it.
Yeah, but COVID has blown that away.
Are not doing.
COVID is the problem here. COVID meant they had to reset everything.
But the restrictions from COVID have now ended. Now, whether that's right or wrong is a different question. But there is no longer any reason why we can't push ahead with that. And in fact, there's every reason why we should be doing it, because it's super urgent. It would, in fact, alleviate the fuel crisis as well. And what I find kind of disingenuous is that when we're talking about queues at petrol stations, we're talking about everything else. Suddenly, when we're talking about people raising awareness about an incredibly important issue, it's, oh my goodness, somebody got slowed down on an important journey.
Yeah, and ended up paralysed, Kate.
When we're talking about the fact that Boris Johnson knew the fuel crisis was coming and did nothing about it for months and months and months, he's not being held accountable for people who had important journeys. It's a
bit of a stretch between the two. Richard, thank you. Storm.
We're going to speak to Debbie from Manchester now, who actually agrees with Kate.
So you agree with Kate? Hey, Debbie.
Hello.
Hello. What do you think?
I think they're absolutely disgusting, because I'll tell you what's disgusting, the way the police them differently. Right, they've been given an injunction. Why are they not being arrested? When there are peaceful protests in London, in Newcastle, in Manchester, the police come armed up, belting people over the head with batons. There's blood everywhere. They're spraying the spray into 17-year-old women.
What are you talking about here?
Why is the police...
You're talking about Black Lives Matter protests or what?
No, I'm not talking... They get away with it. Anybody else other than no more lockdowns or no more vaccines.
I see. You're saying that the police are particularly brutal when people protest against lockdown?
When they protest against the narrative that isn't for the government, isn't the government narrative, they get battered. And I want to know why. I want to know why these idiots are being led off. And Kate, you're a fool. Dawn, I watch you and I've got great admiration for you, and you, Jeremy. But the woman that said, and Kate saying, well, people are slowed down. No, they're not damn well slowed down. They're being stopped. And the lady that had the stroke, ring for an ambulance, the ambulance couldn't have got through to her. They couldn't have got through to her.
But the point that Kate's making,
point-
Debbie, is that the
point-
insulation thing needs to happen. The government promised it. If they did it, the protesters wouldn't have a protest.
No, it doesn't need to happen. Why don't they why don't they go outside the Chinese embassy? Why don't they go and sit outside the Chinese embassy? Because, and what would the police do if they did?
Thank you, Debbie. Thanks a lot. Storm.
We're going to speak to Kathleen now from Birmingham.
Hey, Kathleen.
Hello, hi. Hello, good morning.
Hi, getting loads of calls on this today. My goodness.
Yes, I'm coming from another view. The point is, not only are they, I don't think they are right. They're putting themselves in danger. If they're lying on the road and they're having a heart attack, they expect the emergency services to go to them. Also, people in cars. Like, I was horrified to hear about that poor woman that was paralysed. May I ask the panel just one thing?
Please, yeah.
Right. Supposing any of you and your loved one was lying on the road protesting and suddenly had a heart attack, you would be expecting the emergency services to go to that person.
Well, that's a good point.
And put their lives at risk.
Yeah.
Have you thought about that?
So if one of the protesters had a heart attack, would they clear the road for them, Kate?
Well,
yes.
I bet they would,
because
actually.
They're super gluing themselves to the
But
road,
I'm
so that's
just
very much
using
the
a heart
point.
attack.
But-
All right, Kathleen, hang on. Let them answer.
But, you know, for me, yes, I mean, of course, when we want emergency services to ever get through, but the way to clear these protests is to stick to the manifesto pledge and do this thing, which is incredibly simple. We know how to do it. It's incredibly cost effective. It would create jobs. It would save fuel. It would reduce emissions. It would reduce household bills. It would do everything that is great.
But you
for
can't
the
do a bad thing. You can't justify a bad thing with a good thing.
You know, of course, there is a risk that you go out and you're on a protest somewhere and you have you need treatment, you need medical treatment, and of course, at that point you would call for the emergency services. But let's not remember that I personally feel like my life is much more at risk from the impact of climate change when
maybe that's the big
doing
issue.
nothing about
Dawn,
it.
in 100 years, we'll think they were bang on.
No, we won't, because, as I said, they are putting lives at risk, they are putting their lives at risk, and they are actually, I think, having the opposite effect of people feeling positive about working towards climate crisis. And look, and I do.
The government are putting lives at risk by not taking action on climate.
Gotta move on.
They are almost demanding.
Let
Dawn finish.
They are almost demanding, like in a terrorist way. They want 29 million leaky homes insulated by 2030. Well, start with your own. And also, you can't insulate 29 million homes in this country because a lot of those houses are very old. They're listed, but you can't insulate them.
Okay.
So it's not possible.
Thank you very much.
And they've been
No,
very
it's-
clear
All
on
right,
their
all right.
website
We're gonna
about
move
how
on.
you would do it and what would happen.
We've got to move on.
their own.
Loads and loads of calls on that, my goodness. Later, our stories of the day, including the schoolboy who's been made an honorary member of his favourite football team. It's a lovely story.